Good. Well, my name is Carlton Doe. I'm with IBM, and today I'm going to be giving you just a preview of what the new Informix, uh, it's called a badge, and you can see the pretty picture of the badge there on on this splash screen. So Informix has gone away from using a certification program to a badging program. And I don't really know why, unless it's supposedly new ooey gooey, feel good, cuddly nomenclature. They've just over the past 2 to 3 years, everything has gone to badges, maybe so that you can stick some electronic doohickey on your curriculum vitae or something. But anyway, so we no longer refer to it as the certification program or the certification exam, but the badge exam. The older certification exams, for example, 12 and 11 and so forth, when they existed, have been withdrawn and removed from circulation. Now, you might ask, why is that? And there's a couple of different reasons. Not all of them I've been able to track down, and at least I've been told a number of different reasons. Not all of them I've been able to verify and get to truth on them. So let's just say that they're not available and go from there. The 1410 badge exam will cover everything up to, but not including XC6, and will be rolled out shortly. There's a couple of logistical problems that need to be solved first, including how payment for the exam is going to be received. The cost for the exam currently is $150. However, if you register for the IIUG conference, you will receive a certificate for a free exam. So you pay your $150 to go to the IIUG conference and you get the exam for free. Now that certificate must be redeemed within 90 days. So there is a time limit to this. By the way, if you have any questions and so forth, please feel free to put any questions in the chat area. I'll be seeing and monitoring those, and at the end of my presentation, I'll answer them. So anyway, what's the exam going to cover? Well, these are the actual libraries out of the badge exam test. So you can see that there's sections on administration and backup and restore and clustering and so on and so forth. And there are questions inside each one of these library categories that will test your knowledge on that particular topic area. Now am I going to show you any of those questions? Absolutely not. But just understand that these are the general topics that we expect you to be familiar with. Now, these exams are not, or the questions are not difficult. The people who work together to create this badge exam really strove to test on general expected usage and not super critical minutia syntax flags. For example, is it a capital A or a lowercase a? You won't see those types of questions. Now, that said, there are a few syntax questions in there to test your general understanding of perhaps how do you do a level 0 backup. But other than that, it's not going to be it shouldn't surprise you. At least the difficulty of the exam shouldn't surprise you. Most of the questions are multiple choice, though there are some true and false questions. One of the things that I did is go through and review every single question that was in the exam to make sure that it was clearly written, that the expectation for that question was clearly understood. Were multiple responses required? A single response was required. We spent a lot of time making sure that people could read and understand what's there. The exam itself will draw 60 questions out of those libraries, and you'll have 90 minutes to take the test. The exam, as you would expect, will be proctored, but there are both local and remote modes available to take the test. Unlike previous exams, this exam is open book. So if you want, you can have the information center up and running, and you can use that as a resource. However, based on the time limit of 90 minutes for 60 questions, you're not going to be able to look up every question. So you're going to have to know your stuff in order to take the exam. And even though it is open book, that does not mean you have lifelines. You cannot call somebody, you cannot have somebody else in the room to help you take the exam. The pass criteria is 72%, and there's quite a bit of discussion on whether that was too high or too low, but as a team we felt that was appropriate for this exam. So how do you prepare to take the exam? Well, just continue being an awesome Informix administrator. The test really isn't that hard. In my opinion, earlier certification exams were much more difficult to pass. There were more categories. The questions were more technically detailed. As I said, this exam, the scope is a little bit more limited and the focus is on common usage rather than esoteric theory or esoteric syntax. That said, you do need to know your stuff. You do have to be a somewhat competent Informix DBA, in my opinion, to pass it within the time limit. If you're still worried about passing the exam, be aware that Scott Pickett and I are conducting half-day tutorials for the exam as part of the IIUG conference. As in years past, when we've had face-to-face meetings, these tutorials will be taught after the general sessions of the IIUG conference. We're not sure if it's going to be the day after or have one in the late afternoon of one day and then early morning of the next, but they will, each one of us, or I should say, both of us will be doing half-day tutorials. He has some topics that he's covering. I have other topics that I'm covering out of the exam. And it is unfortunately going to be death by PowerPoint. There's just no way around this. My session alone has over 300 slides to it. So gear up with your chair pad and your drink bottle because it's going to take a while to get through. At least the way I've scheduled my portion of it, and I haven't looked at Scott's yet, but I imagine it's similar. I'm going to cover all of the topics of my sections, and somewhere sprinkled in will be the specific answer that you need for an exam question. So for example, I know I have the HA cluster. You will not see a sign that says, oh, to do XYZ in the HA cluster, you do this. Oh, to do XYZ in the HA cluster, you do that. I'm not going to give you the answers that clearly. I'm going to explain how the cluster works, what some of the general syntax rules are, what some of the use cases are, and in that presentation, you will get the information you need to answer a specific question. So that's how at least my section is going to be working. How do you take the exam? Well, it's my favorite technical answer, and that is it depends. There's actually two ways to take the exam, or if you're Canadian, write the exam. There is the face-to-face option, which is the preferred one, and there is a COVID-friendly remote option. In both cases, it will require the nomination and acceptance of an exam proctor. So someone will be proctoring you during the exam, and we'll talk more about proctoring in just a second. Stuart Lytell is the exam administrator. So any questions, problems, concerns get directed to Stuart, who will handle all of that administrivia for it, including the proctoring process. So how do you get in and register to take the exam? You will go to this website, the informix.skillsnetwork.site is the URL. Create your user ID. Once you log in, click on the courses option, and there is one exam here for the Informix administration. You will select that, and then you'll see information about the exam, the topics covered, 90 minutes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is from this page that you will either enter your payment information or your certificate information once that's built into the web interface. And instructions about proctoring is on the lower half of this page. So once you go through that, so how do you get a proctor? Well, if you're taking it at a face-to-face event, such as the IIUG conference, you won't need to worry about that because there will be specific periods of time where proctored exams will be given. But for those of you who are taking it outside of a face-to-face event, whether it's going to be a local exam with someone or remote, this is the proctoring process. You will register for the exam, you pay your money or enter the certificate information. Then you will send an email to Stuart with the following information to nominate a proctor. The first is, what is the exam name? And because I'm such a nice person, I will give you one answer to a question that you need to respond to. And so the name of the exam is Informix Administration Exam. You will enter your name. You will tell us where you want to take the exam. As I said, it could be at your home. It could be in a business office, something like that. Then the proctor's name, title, and email. Stuart will validate the proctor's credentials. Now, what does that mean? Well, we don't want you to nominate your 3-year-old who is taking a nap while you take the exam. This will need to be a, quote, qualified adult, end quote. Now, what does qualified adult mean? I have no clue. We'll let Stuart deal with all that administrivia, but it will be someone who has a valid LinkedIn profile or some other professional qualifications that we can look at and say, okay, yeah, this person is, quote, qualified, end quote, to proctor a badging exam. Once that proctor is nominated, the proctor will be and accepted. Stuart will send the proctor instructions on how to administer the exam, and then you and the proctor will set up the time, place, etc., to actually take or write the exam. So if you're doing this in the COVID-friendly remote option, you will and let's assume that the proctor is not co-resident with you. You must take the exam with your webcam turned on and audio enabled, because the proctor must verify that you are in a clean room, which means that it's just you and one computer. You don't have any phones with you. You don't have any other Bluetooth devices. No one else is in the room. You will need to provide and show the proctors some form of government issued ID to verify that you are who you say you are and is the same that's taking the exam. You will then, once both you and the proctor agree, you'll log into the exam website and you will start taking the exam. The exam is scored immediately upon completion, but once the exam is complete, the proctor will have to submit a certification form attesting to the fact that the exam was administered properly, that all the rules were adhered to, and once that is processed, you will receive your notice of completion, and if it was successful, you'll be directed to where you could download your shiny, pretty new badge that you can put on something. If you're doing this face-to-face, the process is almost exactly the same. You'll arrive at whatever the test site is, again, government ID, clean room protocols. So this isn't something you're going to want to take in a public library where people are wandering around behind you. This needs to be in an office or some other room that's just you and the proctor. Again, clean room protocols are in place. You log in, take the exam, scored, proctor submits a certification, and you get the download link for the shiny new badge. And that's really all there is to the exam and the process of registering and administering and taking the exam. So I see no questions in the chat area, but I will pause for just a second to see if there's anything you guys would like to ask. Okay, somebody's asking if Gary Proctor knows how busy he will be. I don't see how Gary Proctor fits into this, but I would imagine Gary will be just as busy as he ever was before. Is there anything else? Okay, with that, I will stop sharing here and wish you all a great day. I will continue listening in because I'm excited to hear what Paul and Scott have to say, and as well as Tom. So I'll allow you to enjoy the rest of the meeting.
So